heavens count the steps you take. Helheim. Helheim. You came for a story. Now the story keeps you.
On tonight's episode of Tales from Helheim, it's not about ghosts. It's about something a bit different. There are no haunted houses, not even a cursed object in sight, no unexplained shadows moving in the dark. No, instead, tonight's story is about something far more disturbing, because sometimes the most terrifying monsters on Earth are not supernatural at all. Sometimes they're human. This is the story of Kelly Ann Bates, a 17-year-old girl whose murder became one of the most horrifying criminal cases investigators in England had ever seen, and a crime so brutal that even veteran detectives struggled to describe what had happened inside a small house in Manchester. Now, who was Kelly? So Kelly Ann Bates was born in 1979 and grew up in Great Manchester, England. By every account from friends and family, she was kind, friendly, and fairly deeply trusting. Now, she did love animals, and everybody could see it. She also enjoyed spending time with her friends, and she had the normal dreams of someone just beginning to step into adulthood. Now, Kelly came from a family that loved her deeply. Her parents often described her as warm, caring, and eager to help others. But like many teenagers, Kelly was also searching for a bit of independence. Now, what's one of the things that means? Well, she wanted to be able to make her own choices. And unfortunately, one of those choices led her into the path of a predator. So when Kelly was 16 years old, she met a man named James Patterson Smith. Smith was 48 years old. 48 years old. Now that's more than 30 years older than she was. What the fuck? Now, James Patterson Smith, he had a bit of a troubling past. Several of his former partners had later came forward describing him as controlling and abusive. Now, at the time Kelly met him, those warnings were unfortunately not widely known. To Kelly, Smith appeared charming. He paid attention to her, a lot of attention. He told her she was mature for her age. He also told her that she understood him in ways other people just couldn't seem to do. And unfortunately, these tactics are extremely common among manipulative predators. They isolate their victims emotionally from people who might protect them. And then unfortunately, slowly, the isolation begins to grow. And it does not get better from there. Kelly's parents immediately felt uneasy about the relationship. The age difference alone was alarming, but they also sensed something else. Something about Smith felt very, very wrong. They kept trying to discourage the relationship over and over again, but Kelly believed that she was in love. Eventually, Kelly made a decision that would change everything. She moved into Smith's home in Gorton, a district of Manchester. Now, at first, things seemed normal, but the situation began to deteriorate quickly. Neighbors later reported hearing arguments coming from the house. Then, the arguments became louder. Then people started hearing something even worse. Any guesses? No? Well, it was screaming. And at the time, many assumed it was simply a troubled relationship. I mean, if you think about it on a basic level, domestic disputes happen everywhere. And, people tend to hear arguments through walls all the time. But what no one realized was that something far darker was unfolding inside that house. Now, over a course of weeks, Kelly was subjected to sustained abuse. Police would later determine that she had suffered more than 150 separate injuries, which is ridiculous. Medical examiners concluded that the injuries occurred over an extended period of time. This was not a single act of violence. It was systematic torture. Kelly, she had been restrained, she had been beaten, and she had been starved. Now, the injuries documented during the autopsy shocked even experienced investigators. One pathologist involved in the case stated that the brutality of the injuries made it one of the worst cases he had ever encountered in his entire career. This wasn't just a crime of rage. No, this was deliberate. It was prolonged. And it was deeply and madly fucking sadistic. Eventually, Kelly died from the abuse. And after that, James Patterson Smith contacted emergency services. He had attempted to claim that Kelly had died accidentally, but when officers arrived at the scene, well, they immediately were able to realize that something was terribly, terribly wrong. And what helped them be able to understand and see that was the extent of her injuries. Those just made it clear that this was not an accident, that it was, in fact, a murder, and Smith was arrested soon after. Now, during the trial, prosecutors laid out the full extent of the abuse. Medical testimony revealed the prolonged nature of the torture. Evidence showed that Kelly had been trapped in a cycle of escalating violence, and the jury ultimately found James Patterson Smith guilty of murder. He was sentenced to life imprisonment, and the presiding judge described the crime as one of extreme cruelty and brutality. Honestly, I think he deserves way, way worse, and I hope he gets what is coming to him while he's locked up. Now, Kellyanne Bates was 17 years old. She trusted someone who pretended to care about her, and that trust sickeningly cost her everything. Now, cases like this remind us of something deeply uncomfortable, that the most terrifying monsters are not always supernatural. Although demons are terrifying, ghosts can be terrifying, even wendigos, but they do not always hide in the dark. Sometimes the most terrifying things look ordinary. Sometimes they appear quite charming. And sometimes they say exactly what you want to hear. And that is what makes them so fucking dangerous. Because unfortunately in this life, the real horror is human. And with that, this has been Tales from Helheim.
They followed you out. Snow in your lungs. Ravens on the roof counting. Helheim. Helheim. Shut the door. You won't shut the memory. Until next time.